Hello and welcome back to my channel. For today's card, I am using Crunchy Leaf ink and I am stamping out several images from various stamp sets. To start with, I have Apple-solutely Awesome, You Goat This, and Happy Harvest. I do end up pulling in a couple other little images, but it's not super important. Alright, so here I have my Scan and Cut mat, and it is completely not sticky anymore, which is why you see me using washi tape around the edges to hold it still. Now here I'm showing you my Scan and Cut. I apologize real quick for the shakiness of my camera. It was really difficult to do this stuff one-handed with the camera steady in the other hand. I had decided to include this little bit because a lot of questions have been asked about it. And here I'm just doing a quick run through on how I use my machine. This can be found probably way more in depth in other YouTube channels videos if you just look up Brother Scan and Cut. Mine is the CM350, I believe. Alright, so now it's scanning the images, and something you really have to be aware of when it shows you the little preview is that sometimes it does not register everything the right way, and it might chop up your images. So especially if you've colored them, you really want to pay attention to this or you might get really upset later. Alright, here I am reducing the matte size, not matte size, the image that it's going to recognize. I don't really need it to recognize the rest of the matte. It just takes longer for it to do that, and it's better to just cut it down a little bit. Sometimes this takes a minute. Now that that's done, you can see the things that are outlined in black. I'm going to click OK, and then I'm going to choose this little two-circle thing to add an outline to all of my images. This will kind of give it like a die cut look. And now I'm going to make it bigger. You can actually make it up to 400% bigger, and then you can scroll over the mat to see. Like you can see the corn here. It's not going to stamp or cut the stamped images the right way. It also a lot of times wants to cut into my washi tape. There's a way to deselect these images. Anyway, the corn was mostly no good. I did have to restamp, and the original bits that I did had actual corn on the stalks, and then the second time I just stamped the stalks themselves. The deselection process is easy but annoying. I did have a stylus that came with this, which makes it a lot easier, but I don't know where that is, so whoops. I think you can use other styluses. I don't think it's super specific to this machine. Anyway, once you have all those deselected, then you can start cutting. And it'll give you the option to cut or draw. I've never done the draw option. I really only use this thing to cut out my stamped images. As an investment, I actually got this as a gift. Several people went in on it, and I can say it saved me a lot of money on dies. Although with this method, you don't get the push down edges that you do when you use dies, and I actually kind of like that look. When it is finished cutting, it will pop up a little message. You can unload the mat, turn it off. It's pretty easy. I could get another mat. I think they're fairly expensive, so washi tape is the way to go. I will say that when you do this, if you're not careful, sometimes the tape can get stuck in the machine and it will not read your mat after that. You will have to pull it apart and clean it. I did have to do this. It's only been once, but it was scary for a minute because I thought my machine was ruined. Okay, so I've been talking way too much. If you want to skip the coloring, I believe 11 minutes and 23 seconds is when I stop. There's quite a bit of coloring today, just because I added a lot of images. Now, for this card, I really envisioned a fall harvest sort of thing, fall festival, whatever. So that's why I have so many images incorporated into this card. I know anyone who's been here for any amount of time on my channel knows that I just cannot resist a scene card with like all the images. So if this isn't for you, I'm sorry. It's one of my favorite things to do. So for my pumpkins, I have a blue-green color because I really like the bluishy pumpkins. I never buy any, but I always think they look really cool. It also adds a little bit more color variation in the scene. I have a couple different oranges, and that was just to make things look a little bit more interesting. And then for my sunflower, I know I have my fingers in the way a little bit too much. My phone likes to move on the stand a little bit, and I don't tend to notice. And like right here, it's swaying. Why was it swaying? Who knows? Anyway, it's basic coloring. I'm not doing anything super special. I'm keeping the darkest bits to the center of the petals, and the little petals behind, I do have those a little bit more dark because more shadows would be cast on them. For the centers, I like to do a dotty texture in the center of sunflowers because if you look at a picture of a sunflower or look at one in real life, they do have a lot of texture in the center. And I found that making dots kind of helps that. Moving on to my bales of hay, this is the first time I've colored these, so I really wasn't sure what I was doing. Ultimately, I ended up doing flicking motions with my markers from the top and the bottom of the front portion, and then kind of adding some of that texture to the side and the top as well. It kind of is how I do hair. I don't know if this was super effective, but I didn't want it to be super flat. Now for my little crows, these poor guys, I do not have the, was it C3? I don't know. My grays aren't close enough, my cool grays. I have a couple more, but they're dried out. So I was pretty limited on how I colored these, and this blend took quite a bit of work to get it to look right. And even then, I guess it could still be questionable. I don't think you notice it's not blended quite as well on the final card though. I did feel like I needed to add a little something to the eye, so I'm taking my black glaze pen and I'm just going to dot the eye. And for this, you really need to leave it for a few minutes so that it dries because it does stay raised and it takes a minute to dry. And I have smudged it on my critters and things more than once. Moving on to my little scarecrow. This is one of my favorite images from all of Lawn Fawn. This was actually one of the first sets I got, and I really haven't used it enough. I used it really early in my card making, but I really haven't pulled it out much since. Now while I am coloring the shirt, I did decide that I wanted some little patches on his shirt, which is kind of funny because I end up adding an element later that I did not show you that I colored because this was like a last minute decision after I'd colored everything else, and it kind of covers up a lot of the patch. I was really trying to keep my color palette limited, so I used my E44 marker to make little stitching details. And then on this long rectangular patch, I went a little bit too dark heavy with my lines, I guess, for the stitching. Like after I got done, I was like, oh, that looks so bad. However, it did not bother me enough to redo it. I just wasn't into that. Now here, I have two baskets, and these are actually the apple baskets. One actually has the apples in it, and the other one I did a little bit of masking so that I could create the basket and then put some corn in it. And this was actually fairly easy. The one thing that did happen though was my basket didn't stamp the best. So if you see on the left side, there really wasn't the lines to follow as well. But since I had colored the apple basket first, I had something to kind of guide me through that. Now for the corn, everything is stamped in brown. And luckily, you can kind of cover over that with your colors. So the little green parts of the corn stalks can actually be green. And I'm just doing that now. Really quickly coloring over them. I'm not adding too much detail to this. And then for my corn, I'm going to go in with a base layer of yellow, a fairly light yellow. And then I'm going to go in with a darker yellow and just create dots in it. This will give it a little bit of texture. For a moment, I considered doing the really colorful corn and then decided against that as it might look a little odd and less like corn because my dots are fairly random. I know I am talking so much, you guys. You could just mute me if you want. For my apples, I decided to use green, and this is the exact same color as the scarecrow shirt. And then I have one yellow and some reds to do my red apples. Now, I always do yellow in my red apples just to kind of brighten up the color of the apples. And a lot of red apples do have some yellow streaking in them. So I find this to be the best color for apples for me. I'm taking my darkest green, and I am just coloring the leaves real quick. No extra detail. Now because I have so many images, I am doing a slimline card today, and I am starting by inking up the background with a cloud stencil. This one's actually a Simon Says Stamp cloud stencil. Rotating it, you guys have seen this before, and just inking along the edges. I am using my tumbled glass ink. A lot of this is going to be covered up, again, because I have so many images. But I wanted to make sure that no matter where I place things, I would still be able to see the sky between them, and it would look like an actual sky. So for now, that's done. I am going to take the same paper, and I'm going to cut from the grassy hill borders 2 borders to go along the bottom of my card. Now obviously this is not long enough, so I have to do it in 2 parts. So I have a taller back piece of grass right here, and then I'm going to show you how I did the second one. Just using my back panel of grass to kind of get the placement. And then here I have partially die cut the grass one time, and then I added the second one to it. And I did leave a little bit of a gap, and this is something you can kind of cut out. I knew that I could put something there over these, and they're both around the same area, so it would be really easy to cover up. To color my grass, I am using peeled paint, Distress Oxide. This is just giving it a base color. And then once these are all inked up with that, I am going to go in with my Mowed Lawn Distress ink. And I'm going to start from the bottom of my little grass panels and work my way up. And I'm just trying to give it a little bit of dimension, especially because my front panel and my back panel will overlap each other, and I didn't want it to get lost. Now to add a little bit of texture to my grass, I am squishing down my Mowed Lawn Distress ink, spraying it with water to dilute it, and I'm just splattering my little grass panels. And after that is dry, I can attach my grass to my sky, and I am leaving some gaps at the top where it's not going to be completely glued down. That way I can tuck things behind it if I want to. I'm doing this for both panels. Now comes the fun part, figuring out where everything is going to go. So I'm putting all of my little corn stalks in the back. This will fill up the whole thing, really. I'm only going to glue down the very centers, like the stalk part, not the leaves. That way I don't have to worry about the glue mess if I decide to move them around on the panel, because it will kind of mess up the distress ink in the background. Now I'm going to place my scarecrow, my hay bales. I kind of laid this out first, took a picture of it, and I kind of changed it up as I went. This is something that I wouldn't be comfortable gluing straight down if I hadn't already had a plan. I'm not that good. I would mess something up. I would dislike my card. But anyway, this kind of reminded me of, I don't know, like I said, a fall harvest festival, maybe like a farmer's market. I just thought it was really cute. Just tucking pumpkins here and there. I am trying to be mindful of the colors so that I have similar colors on both sides of the panel. Now the little banner that I put in the scarecrow's arms, this was a last minute decision, and I colored it off screen. I tried to use the colors that I already used for the rest of my items in the scene, And I did add a little bit of pattern to each little banner with my Cricut pens. And the reason I did this was because it really didn't fit a word that I wanted to put there. So I figured a pattern would be cute. It also fit perfectly in the Scarecrow's arms. And this banner came from the little Fantastic Friends add-on. It fit perfectly. Now here I'm just adding all my little elements. I didn't worry about doing the stalks or stems of the sunflowers. I didn't really figure that would be hugely missed. They were very short anyway. I'm just cutting off the ends that are overlapping the sides, and after that my card is complete. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll be back with another video soon. Bye!